Hi, hello, reader family. I hope you're doing well. This is Sukaja. Welcome back to the Bookish Bulletin YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be doing the end of the year book tag. That's right. It has been such a long time since I did a book tag on this channel. So, I hope you'll stick around and enjoy the rest of the video. So, the end of the year book tag was created by fellow YouTuber Ariel Bisset many moons ago. Let's go into the first question without further ado. Was there any book that you did not finish in your reading this year? Yes, there were in fact several books that I didn't finish reading this year. The first of them being Night Shift by Stephen King. I know I did a reading vlog where I hoped to finish that book, but it didn't happen because I left it halfway through. Why? Because it's a collection of short stories and the short stories themselves are very entertaining. There are breaks that you take in between because a short story is not continual. You're going to be taking your time with it. So that's what happened. I am midway through Night Shift by Stephen King. Now, the second book I DNF'd was Private Rights by Julia Armfield. And those of you who've heard of Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield would be familiar with this title as well. So this book is about three sisters. And the thing is that it's always raining in this book, and it's pretty much like a flooded Venice. That's the atmosphere that is pervading this book. And the three sisters are part of a dysfunctional family. They don't necessarily get along with each other. They have a lot of baggage. They aren't really making an effort to kind of talk through, build that relationship with each other. So that is what frustrated me about that book. I just couldn't relate to so many aspects of it, and that's why I wasn't able to read it in a continual rhythm. One thing about me is I like to read a book really fast, and that usually happens if the book is well paced and I'm really hooked by the premise. This is what I think. The better the book, the faster I read it. In other words, that's what I'm trying to say, and I'm not sure how many of you can relate to that, but let me know. The next book I DNF'd was If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha, and I'm so sad that I DNF'd this book because it's actually a really interesting book with a great premise. It's set in South Korea. It's about the lives of Korean women, and it deals largely with doing facial reconstruction and doing plastic surgery, which is a pretty common thing that happens in modern South Korea. So these women in this narrative are really obsessed with trying to make themselves look better. For some reason, I started reading this book in the beginning of the year, but then I got distracted and I wasn't able to finish it. The next book I DNF'd is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, which I also need to finish reading. I thought it started off pretty well, but it is not in the same pacing as the other books by Gillian Flynn that I've read. It is a bit slower, and it feels like an internal monologue when we're reading about the narrator and what she's going through and experiencing. So I think it requires that you set aside a certain amount of time to kind of just get into the novel, which is something I haven't done, which is why I have DNF'd Sharp Objects as well. But I really am excited to finish reading it. The next book I DNF'd is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This is dark academia and along the lines of The Secret History, which is one of my favorite books of all time. ML Rio is again about students, set in a collegial environment and things like that. But I read this so long ago and I forgot what I was reading. But I remember it being not as gripping as I expected it to be, so it didn't hook me on instantly. So it's the kind of book I think that you have to give it some time. You have to pass the first 200 to 300 pages and then you'll finally, get invested in the story, which is what I think was the case with ML Rio's book. So those are the books that I DNF'd this year. So I've answered the first question. Now let's get on to the second question in the end of the year book tag. So the next question on the book tag is, do you have a book that'll help you transition to the end of the year? And I happen to have two of them. So the first book is Japanese Ghost Stories by I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right. So this is a collection of short stories about ghosts in Japan. As the title explains, I don't know much about this. Demonic paintings coming alive and how the dead wreak revenge on the living, and it's full of chills and some Japanese mythology, folklore, things like that. This is actually written by a Irish writer who drew on the phantoms and ghouls of Japanese folklore, including the flesh-eating goblins and the faceless Mujina, to create these eerie tales, which are celebrated in Japan today as classics of world literature. Sounds super interesting. There is no better autumnal book reading choice than a collection of ghost stories, so that's exciting. The next book I'm planning to read to help transition to the end of the year is Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kwong. She also is the author of Babel, side note. But this is about a writer who's actually a failed writer, and she is not having any luck with her novel. And there's another person who comes into her life and then steals her narrative and makes it her own. And that's because the author dies in a freak accident, leaves her novel behind. What I've heard about this is that the narrator is super annoying. So I am bracing myself to be able to digest the content of this book. I don't do very well with like annoying narrators, but you need variety when you read literature. You can't just read like a super perfect narrator in every book. You need to have like a good mix of people who are very flawed and very real and very imperfect. That is what this book is about, and I'm looking forward to getting into this to help me transition to the end of the year. The next question on the book tag is, are there any books that haven't yet been released that you are anticipating? And for me, there are two books. The first one I am happy to report is a memoir by Cher. Cher is a rock and roll singer. She's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She's super popular and she's written a memoir, and it's a two-part memoir. So the first part of her story is coming out in November. Cher has had remarkable achievement in her life, but at the same time, her upbringing and all of the things that shaped her. I'm really interested in reading about that. She had a difficult relationship with her mom, but she was still inspired by her mom. Just understanding her circumstances and the things that inspired her to do her work, that would be really interesting. There's also bits about her marriage with Noah and the backstory of that. Sounds pretty interesting and something like I would want to check out. Now the next is something I'm super excited to bring up in this channel, and that is Haruki Murakami's next book, which is called The City and Its Uncertain Walls. It's a novel, it's fiction. I think it's been a while since we had a Murakami come out, and this one is seriously something that has perked up my ears and my curiosity. This doesn't happen very often with Murakami for me. I am a bit biased when it comes to his works. I will be interested in checking this out. There's a little bit of magic realism, which is something that doesn't sit with my palette very well, but I will nevertheless give it a benefit of doubt and read this book because it might just be a game changer of a novel. This is about a couple. I mean, it's not about a couple. His books are never about any one thing. It starts off with a boy and a girl who are in love, and then they kind of separate. The girl disappears from his life, and then this man gets old, and when he's in his 40s, he has some dreams and some premonitions which tell him to kind of leave his town and go to the mountains. Then finally he comes to a lot of realizations in the end, which is something that'll hopefully be really interesting for us to read about. So those are the couple of books I'm looking forward to reading that haven't yet been released and that might still come out before 2024 ends. The next question on the tag is, what are 3 books that you want to read before the year ends? And for me, the first book I want to finish on high priority, as I mentioned in a previous video, it's Hunger Games by Susan Collins. Yes, I am one of those few people out there in the reading world who haven't yet read the Hunger Games trilogy and who has been told by multiple people that I would seriously enjoy and devour this because it's dystopian and it's about a girl and how she's kind of like set to take on the world and things like that. So I'm definitely likely to be inspired by this, but I haven't yet read this. The next book I'm excited to read before the year ends and I hope to do is Wicked by Gregory Maguire. The reason I'm really intrigued by this is because I have always loved the Wizard of Oz story, like the movie that came out back when I was a child, and it was just beautiful. And while I'm familiar with the original Wizard of Oz story, I'm always interested in stories that talk about the villain characters in these books. The Wicked Witch of the West is an underrated villain who I'm sure has several layers to unpack. Really interested in reading really popular stories where we get an angle from the antagonist. And I love authors who do that. Also, Lena Norms, who is a popular YouTuber here, has been recommending this book for years and years because she wrote her dissertation on this book, and I've been intrigued by the fact that she did that, and I hope that, this book will be all that I'm putting it out to be up there. I'm really excited to read Wicked by Gregory Maguire, and then I hope to go and catch the film as well, and then hopefully create like a film versus book video where I talk about what I enjoyed more. Let me know if that type of content is something that you would like to watch in the comments down below. The third book that I'm excited to read before the end of the year is The Held by Anne Michaels, because I have been taking the Booker Prize shortlist very seriously this year. I have not read the shortlist for any of the previous years, but this year something happened and the books were so intriguing and I just felt like I should give it a shot. So I have read 3 out of the 6 or 7 books that have been shortlisted, and I'm hoping to read Anne Michael's The Held as well. But I know that The Held has been the kind of book that is a make or break for a lot of readers on here, so I'm going into it without any expectations. But I also know that I think it's historical fiction. Whatever it is, I'm really interested in reading it. Next question on the tag is there a book that could shock you and become your favorite book of the year? I'm guessing it might be The Idiot by Batuman, simply because I started reading it and it is written so well. This is a kind of book that the author has really poured her heart and soul in, from my understanding, because I listened to her on a podcast recently where she was talking about the experience of writing this book. It's actually part biographical because the author refers to her diaries that she kept when she was in university. The woman is actually Turkish American and she went to Harvard and studied art history among other subjects over there. It's basically her journey being a student at 18 or 19 and how lost she is being in that overwhelming sea of academia that is Harvard, and she talks about all of the things that impact her and her urge to be a writer and things like that, and also falling in love and being young. It's sort of like coming of age, and it's there's a lot of substance in this book from what I understood from having heard the podcast. I will link the podcast down below in case you're interested in giving it a listen. But I'm expecting this book to be quite a shocker and end up being one of my favorites of this year. So I'm really excited to finish reading it. I have only come up to, I think, 16 pages as of the video being live, this particular video. The final question on this tag is, have I already started making plans for my reading for next year? Yes, next year we're going to get better. Next year is going to be the year of certain structure. I am planning to take this YouTube channel to the next level and give you some real variety in terms of offerings. So please do stick around and spread the word. Tell your other bookish friends out there that there is somebody here who kind of reads books and gives you the reviews for free. I do want to be able to read more than what I read this year, and this year my reading goal is 50 books, but I'm hoping to amp it up to 60 next year. I'm also thinking to do a slight variety when it comes to content on the YouTube channel. I'm going to do away with the monthly wrap-up. Nothing too ambitious, going to be really easy on myself, and it's not going to be a super rigid structure, but it's going to be there nonetheless to just be like this guide. Anyway, thank you for watching this really ranty YouTube video and staying till the end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can also consider hitting the bell icon so that you'll be notified every single time I post a new video on here. And let me know what you're reading in the comments. In the meantime, stay safe, stay sane. Bye.